So it's our great pleasure to talk to you, Kateryna, today. Can you introduce yourself and what do you do?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kateryna, musician, artist from Ukraine, and my profession is a classical pianist. I educated from National Music Academy of Kiev. And I relate also to the topic we will talk about today. It's an opera. The first question I saw was, is an opera an art? And I will answer that music has many styles and many forms, and opera belongs to European tradition of music. So it's not Indian music, it's not African music. Opera belongs to European classical tradition. In European classical tradition, we also have many forms. It's singing, instrumental form, orchestra forms. Opera belongs to synthesized form. So it is orchestra playing, it is singing, it is acting, designing, and it's all being incorporated all together into each other art. And the main thing in opera, it's availability of great voices. Of course, orchestra is important, it's accompanying, sometimes it's giving the way to music, but great, open, big voices are very important. We will talk about it later. So what is the form actually? What does it consist? Opera is a story sang in the stage. I remember in Music Academy, we had a question, why people singing this story? Why they don't speak about it? And someone, the teacher, he answered for his question. He said, because you have that much emotions, you cannot keep yourself, you cannot hold yourself. You start singing anyway. So this is an opera. It's a bit funny way to see it, maybe it's philosophical way. Anyway, in opera, everything is singable. And we have some parts which singable in a specific way, like in a church. So it's like, like, I love you, something, something, I want to talk about this topic. So I sing in the one note. I sing in the one note. It's almost like I speak, but I speak it in a singable way. So this way of singing called secco. Secco, it's a recitative. Recitative means kind of pronouncing in a singing way. And we have also singing parts like arias, beautiful ways to show up the hero, to show the feelings of the story. So it's kind of main parts from which opera, what opera consists. So arias, ariosos, small arias, and secco recitatives. Important to remember. And full stage consists acts. It's like in theater. We have act 1, act 2, act 3, act 4 sometimes. The most long operas was made by Wagner. Wagner is one of the great composers of beginning of 20th century. He made his own theater in Bayreuth in Germany, Bayreuth, and he made it exactly for his operas. His operas made on the stories of all German mythology, all Norse, European Norse mythology. It's very complicated, like 1,000 people. It's like, I don't know, it's like sagas, like Indian sagas, Indian weird us, probably. But it's very interesting to analyze. His orchestra consists sometimes 2 people, so the sound is very loud, and the voices in these operas are very loud. The acoustic made exactly for kind of bright stories and bright voices. And what about story? What is it about opera story? There was one funny question, so I found it funny. Is story important for opera or not?
Yeah.
And I answered not. A good story, important or not. It was actually very funny when I was working several years in China, and we had an opera house. I was working there. There was a stage, there was an opera. I don't remember who staged it. So anyway, there was an opera, Verdi Traviata. And as a modern opera house, the libretto, so all text was, you could read it. It was divided in 2 parts, English and Chinese. So you could read whatever they sang if you don't understand. And I found, after reading this story, I found, my God, this is a story about prostitute. It was kind of a sad story, but kind of she didn't have a choice. She lived this poor life, but the story was quite poor. But the singing parts and orchestra parts, all music parts, was amazing. All people, even not musicians, you can hear these arias from anywhere, radio, movies, TV shows. Nobody can say they don't know this music.
Yeah.
So I think story is important, but sometimes music can cover the story. Good story is important, but sometimes music can make more. Music can open more through the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
next the question.
Yeah. Yes.
Is romance important?
Yes, it's a good question. Is romance important in our life? It can be important, it can be not important, but where can we start to see the sparkle? Sparkle, the life of fire in people. You can see it in romance. So it's a good way to show even deep topics, even philosophical topics through the love, through the romance. Mm-hmm. In all operas, you can see, in all movies, you can see the romance. Beautiful, not beautiful, it transformed to beautiful, but you can see it, you cannot avoid it, because there is life. Opera, it's a story. Story is a part of our life, made from our life. So romance is important, but interesting the topics of stories and these all stories, where they're coming from, because operas began after music came out from the church. If you know, I think you from Egypt, you
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, so probably you had your own music story, your own music history. I mean, in European part here, we had long period where all music was preserved in a church only. So you cannot sing, you cannot make music out of the church. All music belonged to church tradition. Anything was made for Christ, Jesus Christ. Anything you do for Jesus Christ, and there has to be words about it. So what we call operas before was cantatas and oratorias. It's names of music forms. Cantata, oratoria, belong to Christian tradition. So Christianity was very important for that. And they also was made like operas. So they had heroes, they had kind of arias, actually not kind of, but exactly arias. Bach, he made arias because he worked for churches, and he made music for churches. It consists arias, ariosos, also small recitatives, like in a church, in a Christian church, when you go, the priest say part of story or some psalms, or just remain the event, what is today we came for. So operas in a different way was in the Christian churches. And when music slowly went out from churches, people start to think about, we don't have only story about Jesus Christ. There are more stories that came out of Bible. Mm-hmm. And they started to take in Baroque, and there was one question, I don't remember exactly, but there was one question about stories. So Renaissance and Baroque, it's the 18th century. They took many stories from ancient Greek culture. Mm-hmm. So even Monteverdi, one of the great composers, Italian composers, he made this form blossom. He composed mostly operas for the house.
One question relating to the stories. Like, is there a bad guy, and why is the bad guy essential in your opera story? Again?
I think, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So I think stories are different. It's like in the movies. So there are some stories about essentiality of the bad guys also. For example, I actually started to talk about this story transformation. In the 18th century, probably people were more interested in taking old Greek stories, right, to remind something what they've forgotten. I will not say about all history, but in the beginning of 20th century, many stories which was not actually beautiful for people to see from the stage, they just uncovered composers. They want to see the life, whatever it is, however it appears, the life even about prostitutes, about bad guys, about somebody kills somebody. Yeah. So the stories become more realistic. And there was one opera called Bohema. It was about, we actually use this word. It's like definition of free life, free artists living together. It's like a community of free artists, Bohema, we use it. But it was an opera, and it was a time in France when people was living together. So there was a interaction between girls and boys, and there was a mixture of love stories, a bit in chaotic way. So of course, bad guys was there.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. Like, is there a part for tragedy? Tragedy?
Yes, you mean tragedy as a form in theater, or you mean tragedy as a
part of your opera story?
Part of opera story. So I will answer for two of my questions. So tragedy, it's a form. It's an old Greek form, theater form. It has some development, right? Some rules. And is a part of opera. It can be tragedy as an emotional way of writing story. Also, can be. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right. To talk about tragedy is a ancient Greek form. I will say tragedy have place in opera, because opera used many ancient Greek stories also. If you talk about emotional way of writing story, tragedy, it also have place in opera because through tragedy you come to beauty.
Yeah.
There were comic operas, also comic operas called opera buffo. We use in classical European tradition, we use many Italian words. So buffo, it's Italian word. Opera buffo and opera seria we use for kind of tragedy stories. Mainly two of these forms was developed. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question, like, does adding a sprinkling of supernatural help?
You talk about supernatural as a part of the story, right?
Yeah.
If you talk about it, so all operas of Wagner is all supernatural movements on the story. So of course, supernatural is I think it's just a way of developing the story, or it's a part of the myth, because Wagner was using the myths. In all myths, you cannot avoid supernatural.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So does social criticism help with building the story for the opera?
Social criticism. You mean professional music criticism, right?
Yeah.
So it is actually a big topic. It was a big topic before in Italy. You know, one of the best theatres in the world is La Scala, located in Italy. It's one of the star opera houses, and it was important for composers and for singers that time to be accepted by criticism by people who see the operas. I remember I saw the article when some singers was singing, and if something goes wrong or they was not going under the public, what public likes, right? So they could they could just throw different things on the stage. It was accepted, or maybe Italian people was that much emotional, I don't know, but it was true. So singers tried to develop their voice, and they also worked hard on their voice. They could use many additional parts in opera before. Now European traditional classical musicians, singers, they just see the notes and they sing according to what is written. At that time, they could improvise and they could put their own part to show up their voice and their techniques is bright. So it was acceptable.
Yeah, okay, you spoke about an aria. What is an aria exactly?
Aria, it's one part inside opera. It can show different aspects. It can show the hero character. It can show actually the hero. It can show development of the story. But mainly it's a characteristic of one of the hero in the story, in the opera.
Wait.
And
yeah. So
Aria can be
go ahead.
Aria can be sang in a stage without opera. So if you see a concert, you can see singers just singing arias without the story.
Give us an example.
One of the examples of the aria.
Yeah.
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 Okay, there is one French composer, Delibes, and he composed. So you can see me, right? He composed beautiful love story about Samson and Dalila, which based on ancient Greek story, but composer belonged to romantic era of music. It's one of my favorite areas. It's Aria of Dalila.
Okay.
Oh, Samson and Dalila, Aria of Dalila. I will not use French. I will use Russian, translation to Russian, how I learned it. Yeah. I will sing only one part because we don't have that much time to to sing all aria. Sorry. I try to. This is the beginning of this aria. This is okay. It was not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was not recorded.
Yeah, I am.
So I could not sing. I was just singing for the record.
Yeah. Go ahead. So this is the Aria of Dalila. Yeah.
Yes, this is Aria of Dalila.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It belongs to romantic era of French music, and Leo Delibes is a composer of this opera.
Yeah.
So this aria basically shows the development of love story. It's an opening of one of the hero Dalila.
Mm-hmm.
And in operas, you see people use different voices. They don't talk like they sing like, so they use specific technique. And they actually divide voices to special categories. For example, this aria made for coloratura voice. Coloratura means one of the high soprano voice, coloratura soprano. And usually most of heroes in opera are coloratura sopranos or mezzo sopranos. Mezzo soprano is a voice lower than soprano. So it's going like soprano, mezzo soprano, two voices of women heroes. Then men voice is tenor, baritone, and bass. I want to talk about, there was a question about best opera singers, right? There was something. Yeah, I want to mention one historical voice. It's a Russian bass baritone. It's a kind of high bass. Bass, it's lowest voice. Bassa profundo also exists, but they don't use in opera so much, only in a choir.
So Kateryna, can you sing something?
This is an example of French opera of Romantic period by Leo Delibes. the opera called Samson and Dalila. And aria, this aria, one of the three arias of Dalila's, show us the development of the character of one of the hero, Dalila. And this song made for high voice called soprano, coloratura soprano. So coloratura is highest soprano voice, which used for many of opera heroes, women. And I can sing one sentence from this aria. It's actually very, very world famous.
Okay, go ahead.
Just unfortunately, we cannot have accompaniment. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Открылась душа, как цветок на заре, для любви моей Авроры. But here you cannot hear the coloratura soprano. Yeah, there will be one more part. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, because this is a small part of the aria. Maybe here. I just want people to understand what is the difference between song and aria.
Okay.
Here. Жгучих глаз твоих ожидаю, от счастья замираю, от счастья замираю, жгучих глаз твоих ожидаю.
Yeah, that's amazing. It has been a great pleasure talking to you, Kateryna, today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.